My guest for this episode of American Songster Radio is my good friend Billy Strings. I had a chance to meet Billy years ago in 2014 at the Folk Alliance International Conference in Kansas City, Missouri. We instantly became friends, and we've kept up with each other throughout the years. In the summer of 2020, Billy and I had one of the best musical experiences when we graced the stage of the Grand Ole Opry in front of an empty room because of COVID shutdown with our friends Old Crow Medicine Show and Molly Tuttle. Since we were deep in the middle of the pandemic, it was the first time in the history of the Opry that they weren't allowed to have an audience. But to our great fortune, folks were able to tune in not only on WSM like usual, but also live on social media and Circle TV. That night we performed a medley of Mama Don't Allow and Will the Circle Be Unbroken, and it was the second most streamed concert that week with over 600,000 views. It was only The Weeknd that beat us out, but that's pretty good, I'd have to say, for old-timey music. It was a musical moment on stage that made country music famous and was an even more amazing experience to see this thing come out on the 2021 vinyl LP, Opry Unbroken. And folks, you can find Opry Unbroken, the special vinyl LP, at Opry.com. It's been amazing to see how much life has changed for Billy since we last saw each other on the Opry and since he's won his very first Grammy Award for Best Bluegrass Album for his solo release titled Home. Now Billy's back with a brand new record, Renewal, and he is keeping very busy on the road, touring the country, sharing his music with crowds ready for some great music. In 2021, he proved to be a prolific recording artist, doing collaborations with world-renowned artists like Del McCoury, Luke Combs, and Bela Fleck. Plus, he got a chance to meet with famous celebrities like Post Malone and Carlos Santana, all in 1 year. And to top it off, between the time that I called him to be on the show and now, he pulled in 2 more awards, winning Entertainer of the Year and Guitar Player of the Year at the 2021 IBMA Bluegrass Music Awards. It's truly inspiring to see Billy out there on the road, and before I welcome to American Songster Radio, I want to play one of the lead singles from his new album, Renewal. Now, this one is more of a ballad, but this is still just showcases Billy's wonderful songwriting, and we'll also get into some picking during the actual interview. But for now, here's a little bit of In the Morning Light from Billy Strings' 2021 album, Renewal. Billy, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you feel me near you?
Yes.
Good to talk to you, man. How you been doing?
Great, dude. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well, just really excited for the episode today, and I'm so glad that you've agreed to be a part of the program, man. I just finished playing In the Morning Light for the audience here, and this episode is built around guitar heroes because you've become sort of a modern guitar hero over the past several years. How do you feel about that?
I don't know. I mean, it's weird to me because I listen to people like Tony Rice and Brian Sutton, and they're just worlds, ahead of everybody else. I don't know, man. It's really cool to see like young kids playing Dust in a Baggie and stuff,
Absolutely. It gets me thinking back, since I kind of met you sort of in a halfway point when you were still playing a lot of traditional bluegrass and sort of, again, you're still playing a lot of bluegrass, and I guess I'll go into that a little bit more as we're talking about it. But, like a song like Dust in a Baggie, from the get-go, I could tell this wasn't just your normal grandpa's bluegrass here in terms of thematic ideas, but you always brought in such a wonderful sound of bluegrass, and you still bring that beat, that feel, those phrases in the guitar playing, and man, I just love seeing where you've gone. Where are you now? Are you at home?
No, I'm in Denver, Colorado, and we're getting ready to do 4 nights here at the Mission Ballroom.
Amazing, man. And how many dates a year are you touring this year? How many would you say that you're doing?
It's hard for me to say. Back when I met you and stuff, I was doing 200 gigs a year, and I think I did that for 8 or 9 years, and I'm just now starting to pull back to 170 or maybe 150.
Nice.
But I would say probably 150 gigs a year at least. I don't know. We work a lot, but with the whole pandemic and everything, of course, we were, we got the rug pulled from under us right when our fire was getting really hot. Although it didn't seem to affect us that much because we kind of, skirted around it and did streaming shows and did, drive-in concerts and socially distanced events and stuff like that. Eventually we got back on our feet, but yeah, that was kind of scary for a moment there.
Yeah, it was. Thankfully you were able to pivot in such a way for the live streams. And then also, I believe you've been venturing a lot into doing a lot of recordings and recording with a lot of different artists as well. I think it's been amazing to see that you've had 4 singles leading up to the brand new album release. Was that something that you had planned on doing from the get-go, or was that something that just kind of came up as you were trying to figure out new things?
I'm always down to write, I'm always down to, like, if I meet somebody who I like their music or I, enjoy their stuff and we become friends online or something. Like my friend Rumor, he's sort of I guess you could call him a rapper, but he's much more than that. He's a great singer, writer, and musician. And I just really dug his stuff that he was doing. It's really out of the box and kind of, different. We just kind of became friends online. And when I wrote this song, Wargasm, there's a part of me, Dom, that I love traditional bluegrass, and I live for it. It's in my heart and soul. I was raised on that stuff, but the sort of attitude that comes along with some of the purists, like, it almost makes me want to just do stuff to make them angry. Like, well, I'm going to put out a song with a black dude in a ski mask that's rapping and see how that makes you feel. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah. And Billy's referring to his again amongst the 4 singles, Wargasm, with the rapper / R&B singer RMR, and it's a beautiful song. Amazing sentiment about wartime attitudes and the different ways that that you're feeling about that, and I think that's amazing. One of the tracks I picked out was Nashville Pickin' from Doc's album Southbound. And I was mentioning to the folks that even in the liner notes to the album Southbound, because Doc is doing songs like The Last Thing on My Mind and a beautiful ballad version of Alberta and a couple of other things that were outside of the realms of traditional music. He even has a note in the liner notes that says, if anybody thinks I'm moving away from traditional music, I'm not. I'm just experimenting with some new territory, and I'm going to do both no matter what. And so I feel like you've been sort of definitely on that same sentiment in your own way, with wanting to cast a larger net with your music. And of course, this includes the wonderful song Globe that you did with Fences. And then, even when you did the traditional bluegrass number with Del McCoury, you're playing mandolin. So you even flipped the script on the types of strings that you're playing instead of just guitar, like most people would know you for.
I tell you what, that was sort of a plan. I got this song coming out with Rumor that I know some people are love and a bunch of people are going to hate. And, I said, well, why not right after that? Why don't we cut this song with Del and put that out, and it's just pure bluegrass, it's Bill Monroe and Doc Watson style, duet. And with Del McCoury, who was in Bill's band, and, sort of to just show people that exactly what you just said, kind of that Doc said, is like, don't get it twisted. Like, I love bluegrass, and that's where I was raised, and that's like where my heart and soul is. When I pick up my guitar after this phone call, I'm probably going to play Nothing to It or Beaumont Rag or, Big Sandy or something like that. I mean, that's the stuff that I play when I just pick up my guitar and sing. But when I listen to music on, Spotify and stuff, I listen to everything from, yesterday lately I've been on a big Charlie Crockett kick.
Oh, nice.
I love Charlie Crockett, man. And I can't stop. I can't stop with that Jamestown Ferry.
Yeah, man.
It's just so good. But in my same search on my Spotify, you'll see Young Dolph you know, which is like Memphis trap. You'll see Beseku, like Beseku Coyote, and like people, you know, Mali music that sort of Bela Fleck has turned me on to a little bit. But I'm really getting into this Mali stuff, which is crazy, you know, and it's old jazz, you know, kind of blue, and Post Malone and Bill Monroe, and, you know, The Faceless and Dying Fetus and Cryptopsy. You know, it's like I just listen to so much different stuff. You know, I love Pearl Jam and Black Sabbath and Hendrix, and I was raised, you know, on bluegrass. Like my dad kind of taught me all that stuff, but later on, time I was about 8 or 9 or 10, he turned me on to some rock and roll, you know, Led Zeppelin. My mom always was listening to Pearl Jam and stuff, and you know, I'm a 90s kid. Like, my dad wasn't a coal miner, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, I grew up in a, like, I grew up in a weird situation where it was like a beautiful childhood surrounded by bluegrass music, but then my teenage years was really surrounded by substance abuse and meth and heroin, and I lost a lot of people, and, you know, and to that stuff, whether it was from overdose or incarceration or suicide, or, you know, just they're still around, but they're not there, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's where a lot of my inspiration comes from, is sort of those hardships that I saw early on, stuff that I went through and stuff that I saw other people going through. You know, I lived in a tweaker pad. There was meth heads in and out of there, you know, and they'd be in my living room one day, and then the very next day they'd be in, you know, getting hauled off to prison for 20 years. And that's actually what Dustin the Baggie is about. Is a friend of mine who went to prison for meth, and he was a banjo picker. He was a great musician. He's actually like the banjo player that I grew up playing with. It was like me and him and my dad. It was us three. We were always picking, you know.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Like I was reading the recent New York Times profile that was done on your newest album, and speaking about your life and overcoming those obstacles with drugs and being able to use your guitar as a means to be able to, one, fulfill a piece of your soul that's connected to your upbringing, but also to help you transcend all of those things. That's a beautiful thing. It actually makes me want to ask you a question that kind of, with all the things that you've mentioned, is there anything that you think about when you're playing a guitar solo? Are you thinking, you know, some people think of notes and scales, other people, like for me, when I'm doing a solo, I think of like writing a book, and it's like kind of like chapters that build on each other. But what sort of things do you think about when you're doing your solos? Because of course you play the vocabulary of bluegrass within your songs, but you take it to different places, and sort of like you've mentioned, there are influences of hard rock and jazz, and then also the many different iterations of bluegrass that have been created since the early days. What goes through your mind when you're picking a solo on something? Do you think of a moment, or are you thinking of where's the next note going to be, or is it just an open adventure?
It's sort of an open adventure. A lot of times I really don't even know what's going on, you know. It depends on what kind of song it is. You know, if it's a faster bluegrass song, I'm sort of hanging on for dear life. But if it's a slower, more mournful kind of song, you know, I will say that I reach deep down into my own emotional content to try to pull out flavors on my guitar. Like, being on stage for me is quite literally my coping mechanism as well as my survival instinct. You know, like, I'm playing to survive. Like, I'm playing for my life, you know? And I think I dig deep, you know, sometimes when I'm up there, and I search for pain, and I search for stuff like that, and I'm trying to claw at the grass and be on my hands and knees begging, you know, through my guitar.
That's amazing, and it's beautiful that you're able to do that every night and be able to present that to an audience that's continuing to grow, and in a time where we're seeing audiences being so dwindling down so much by the pandemic. It's been amazing to see that your audience is continuing to grow and come together through that sort of emotional release that you're bringing with your wonderful music. I mean, we've been talking a little bit about the singles that you've put out leading up to the brand new record, but I have to say, Billy, you know, having listened to you for many years, there's a certain new stride and a new confidence that I hear on this brand new record, in the songwriting and in the singing and the playing. You've always played and sang well, but there's something, I'm hearing a little something different in it, especially with your singing. I'm hearing a new confidence. Are you feeling that, you know, now that you've gotten the Grammy win and that you're riding on a wave, are you feeling a new confidence in your playing?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I've always been, you know, really kind of tough on myself, and, you know, I just like think I suck or something, you know, and I don't know what, maybe a lot of musicians are like that, or maybe that's how I've, you know, been able to improve on my instrument and stuff. But when I listen to something from 2 or 3 years ago, then I can hear the improvement, you know, then I am kind of getting a little better, you know, slowly but surely. And, you know, all I've ever really wanted is just to be like a respected musician. You know, I don't need to be rich or famous. I don't need to be the best guitar player in the world. I don't need to be anything but just like in the scene and like a part of the community. That's what fulfills me, you know, being a part of the same community as Bela Fleck and Jerry Douglas and Brian Sutton and Sam Bush, and being on a first name basis with those guys and stuff. And yeah, so like, you know, I moved to Nashville about 5 years ago and put a band together, and we've been ripping it up and just been sort of hard on myself the whole time in a way. I just got my eye on the prize, you know. I'm not really focusing on anything, and I just want every show to be so good, and I try so hard, you know. And so when you get something like that, you know, to win a Grammy, to have pretty much the entire musical community come together and say, hey, we see you, you know, and we respect what you're doing. And to me, that's just like, okay, like I guess I'm in the music business now.
Yeah, man, and so many people are so proud to have gotten to see you on the rise and on the upswing of all the great things you've been able to do. I mean, you know, from the very first moment I met you, I could see that you had a good head on your shoulders when it came to trying to make sure that the music came first, in whatever way that meant, whether it was something you're writing it or whether you were interpreting it or being able to, again, being able to find that balance between modernity and, I'm going to say genre authenticity, whatever that might mean. Because, of course, if I were to compare your Grammy-winning album, Home, there are a lot of the sort of jam band bluegrass elements within that one. I feel more so than the most recent record, Renewal. And without trying to have the magician give away his tricks too much, was there anything that you thought about in stepping away from Home now that it has come out? It's become the Grammy-winning record for your first Grammy. Was there anything that you were thinking about when it came to moving away from Home and what would become Renewal? Were there any things that you distinctively wanted to set the new album apart from the one that came beforehand? I
just wanted it to really sound like a record, you know. And Home, I guess, you know, it won a Grammy. It's a fine record, you know. But then again, it might be that thing like where I just think I suck or whatever. Like when I listen to it, it probably sounds a lot different than when somebody who, you know, wasn't there or, you know, didn't write the song or whatever. Like, to me, it's like, yeah, it's okay. But to some people, like, Away from the Mire is like their favorite song, you know? And, like, I really wanted to, it was almost kind of like, well, shit, how are we going to follow this up? You know? It was like, man, we're going to have to do something good. And I had these songs, you know, I had a handful of songs, and some of the songs, I think Secrets almost was on Home. Mm-hmm. That's how old that song was. And we never really finished it. And so it didn't make it onto Home because I didn't finish it, you know? And so when we got into making this new record, I started searching back into my old stuff and my old notebooks and my old voice memos. And I'm like, oh yeah, there's this song, you know, that we never finished. And we recorded 21 songs for Renewal. And, you know, then you got to start stripping it down. And how do you make this into a record? And I think starting with a good batch of tunes like that is good, and try to strip it down into something that has like a flow and a feel, and, you know, like little chapters and stuff, like watching a movie or something, you know, like putting leaders at the end was a conscious decision, because I feel like that's the credits rolling, you know, at the end of a movie or something. But to be honest, I think it was like, you know, I don't want to say like that I've got a formula or something, but I just wanted to sort of do the same thing, you know, have some bluegrass, have a little old time, have some totally modern, you know, progressive bluegrass, have some songwriting, you know, have some flat picking, just a little something for everybody, which I feel like Turmoil, Home, and this record does have, you know. On the first record, Turmoil, you know, there's Meet Me at the Creek, which is this big, long, you know, jam. But there's also like Living Like an Animal, and that's like clawhammer, banjo, and harmonica, you know. So I think it comes from just having all these different influences, you know. I love Doc Watson, you know, and all that old time stuff, and I love rock and roll, and I love the Grateful Dead, and I just feel that music is sort of boundaryless if you really let it. And I never kind of wanted to be stuck in one sort of category anyways, you know. And it's a weird kind of line to walk, because then you got all these people saying, oh, well, of course he's bluegrass, or no, he ain't bluegrass, or this or that, or, you know. And it's just like, well, I'm just a musician, you know. I just am writing songs. I happen to grow up playing bluegrass music, but I'm not claiming to be anything, you know. I know what bluegrass is, and a lot of stuff that we do is not, you know.
Absolutely, and I think that it's great that you found a great balance between what people expect and also the things that you know, that they might not expect, you know, in the course of and of course I want to make a mention that Secrets is a fantastic song, and I'm so glad that you went back into the archives a little bit and pulled that one out. I thought that was an excellent decision to put that song on there. And then Leaders as well is a very powerful ballad. And it's funny you jumped ahead of me. I was going to ask you about Leaders, because it is such a sort of a meditative ending song with a sentiment of, like, you know, of world peace and of, environmental sustainability, and a lot of these themes of rebirth and renewal, like the title of the album. But I wanted to take 1 second here if you could name check the main members of your band who have really brought this together. Of course, you know, people can read anywhere that you put together a top-notch band. But could you tell me, you know, I believe there are 5 in the main band with you in a typical setup of a bluegrass band, but you all are the Magnificent 5, and you pick so much that you make up for the other 2. That's for the Magnificent 7 there. But I just wanted to ask you if you could just tell me a little bit about the members of your band, and just maybe 1 or 2 things that make it a joy to work with them, or how you ended up meeting them or bringing them into your group.
Our banjo player, Billy Fleck, he comes from Portland, Oregon, and he lives out in Colorado now. But he was living in Nashville, like about the time that I moved down there. There was this little picking party right across the street from my house. I lived on Petway Avenue at the time, and there was always little jams either at my house or across the street over at Lindsay Lou's house. And so one night I just went over there, and there's this long-haired kid picking the banjo, and I didn't have nobody at this time. I moved down to Nashville by myself, you know, and I had some gigs coming up, and I needed to put together. I never wanted to be a solo musician. Interacting with people is my thing. Like, having the rhythm there to play the solo over is good, mm-hmm. You know. But so I needed to put together a band, man. And I met Billy, and I just said, hey, I got a couple gigs coming up. Would you want to join me? And he said, heck yeah, it sure beats working at the restaurant, you know, or whatever. So he hops in with me, and we went and played a couple gigs together. I still had my old bass player, Kevin Gills, kind of hanging out for a little bit there. But me and Billy Fleck, we played some some gigs, just the two of us even. And then later on, we met Royal Massat, who is our bass player. He's from Texas, but he lives in Nashville, and just an incredible musician. Like, he's the kind of guy that he can, like, I'll go to play something and he'll play it exactly with me at the exact same time. And it's like some improvised thing that is totally not planned out. And it's like, how did you know I was going to play that? He can literally, like, read my mind. It is insane. Like, he's just so good. And just hell of a guy, you know, like, that's the most important thing to me. Like, I don't care how good these guys are at their instruments. None of them would be out here with me if they weren't top-notch human beings, you know? And then Royal played with us for a little bit, and then he introduced us to Jared Walker, who is originally from Florida but is in Nashville now. And he grew up playing with his brothers, you know, and he cut his teeth on bluegrass like me, man, ever since he was a little kid. I mean, like, he was kind of like in that Sierra Hull, Sarah Jarosz kind of generation. And he, you know, when he was like 12 years old and stuff, he like did this gig where he got to play with like Ricky Skaggs and Earl Scruggs and stuff, and, you know, at like this Titan Stadium or whatever. And it's just like, he's been there, you know, he's been playing bluegrass since he was just a sprout, you know, so he's got everything. He can sound like David Grisman. He can sound like Sam Bush. He can sound like Bill Monroe. He loves Frank Wakefield. He loves old school bluegrass, man. And that's like one of my favorite things about him is that, like, you know, we're trying to, what can we play? What new, should we cover a Post Malone song or some shit? It's like, man, can we play Ashes of Love? You know, or whatever, like some old bluegrass song. And I just love him for it, man. He keeps it grassy, and it's awesome. He's a true bluegrasser, man.
Oh, that's
but yeah, and then in the record, and that's the main touring group right there, us four. But we have sort of like an unofficial fifth member who is John Mylander, and he plays fiddle. He usually is out touring with Bruce Hornsby, but we steal him as much as we can, and he's been on pretty much all of my records, I think. So every time I go into the studio, I'm like, man, we got to get John, you know, because he's a fiddle player that knows bluegrass stuff, but he loves Fish and Captain Beefheart and Zappa, and, you know, like, he likes weird shit like that. So he knows how to use pedals and stuff, you know, and get a lot of weird sounds going. So that really helps us when we get into that psychedelic territory. And I will say that whenever we do have John, it just takes a lot of the weight off of us, you know, to have one more guy there that can play long sustaining notes. You know, we only have fretted instruments, so we don't have any big whoop-de-doo slides or, you know, long sustaining notes. We're just a lot of 16th notes.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, that it's a powerful group, and I'm so glad that you've I just had to get everybody name checked there, because that's something that's so distinctive about your sound, is that you have such a great sounding band with you as well. And I mean, it's and you sort of touched upon a lot of the great bands, from Grisman to Sam Bush to and the classic bluegrassers. I will make a mention to the audience here that we're talking a lot about experimentation, but on the new album there are even songs like Red Daisy, which is a real straight ahead bluegrass number. So for folks that are wondering where's the traditional half of it, there are quite a few examples of Billy and the band going through something that's a little bit more standard fare, while also there are things like Heartbeat of America, which is an amazing jam that takes you into a whole nother dimension, which leads me into another aspect of your career as a musician that's continued to grow over time as well, is the visual aspect of your music, whether it be the music videos, the posters, and then even the album covers themselves. Where do you start with a lot of the visual art? Like, for example, I started out our interview by playing In the Morning Light, and what an evocative and powerful music video. Where did that video start conceptually after the song was recorded, and what sort of ways do you dictate and drive the way that your visual art is being presented out to the audience?
That video, you know, I just wanted to make something that I mean, I sort of wanted to make something that would make people cry in a way, but in a happy way. Like, I want the husband to watch that video and realize how lucky he is to have his wife. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And after the video's done, to just go right upstairs and just be like, you know, love on her and just realize how lucky any of us are to have love. It's kind of a just song about letting love in, you know, and I just wanted to portray a couple different different couples and, you know, whatever they are. We didn't just want it to be like one straight, you know, white couple or something, you know, it's like, there's like gay people and, you know, trans people and all sorts of folks, you know, everybody's involved in it. And I think, you know, and I even got some like hateful messages about that, like about the lesbian portion of the video, you know, and it's just like, I think that's another part of me likes to kind of poke at that. You know, if somebody's really uncomfortable with that, then like that's on them, you know, and I don't know, it's a beautiful music video. And so I sort of like poking at the bear a little bit sometimes, you know, and so, and obviously there was no question. I mean, it was going to be, you know, an old couple, a young couple, you know, and then either like an interracial or a gay couple or, you know what I mean? And because young people get in love too. I mean, a lot of people, they fall in love in high school for the first time. And it's, especially at that time, it's very powerful. Like that first breakup it crushes you, you know? And, you know, as well as the old man who's sitting there with his wife of 60 years drinking coffee in the morning, like, and also just that sort of portrait of the morning light, like as the sun's coming up, it's a new day, you know, like I just love that time of day anyways. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it really came across, but, you know, we'll reach out to people who make videos and stuff, you know, directors and stuff like that. And I'll just chat with them they'll come up with something and I'll say, that's not it, or that's cool, but could we do this or whatever? And you know, so there's just kind of a back and forth thing that happens. And that happens with everything. It's, you know, from merchandise to our, you know, the stuff that's going on stage or, you know, our posters and stuff like that. Like I always get a little preview. Say if we get a poster going, I'll get just like a line drawing, you know, and I'll just usually, I mean, they're always awesome. So I'm just like, yeah, just go ahead. That's badass, you know, but like when it comes to videos and stuff, I'm really kind of becoming even more picky. I watched this Billie Eilish documentary that really inspired me. She directs all her own videos, you know, she writes this song with an idea in her head and maybe even a little doodle in her notebook, you know, and the video in that documentary was the one where she has like black stuff, like she's crying like black liquid. And, and it was like, I think she like had somebody else trying to make the video and they just couldn't get it. And so she had to step in and be like, no, this is what has to happen. And I need this, like, this is my dream for this song. And that in itself is like, I'm just realizing that I'm in control of all of that. I'm in control of, I need to be there every step of the way, whether it's the recording process, like I need to be there during mixing and mastering, and I need to have a say in what everything looks like. And yeah, there is I do think about it a lot because I have to deal with that stuff a lot, but I haven't really thought about it like that. Like how much the visual aspect really has to do with my art in itself. And I'm learning that it has a lot to do with it, and that I have to be more in control and almost careful about what. We had one guy for the video for Wargasm. One of the first drafts, like there was this part where like Jesus Christ was like crucified on a swastika, and he was like spinning around, and you know, and I was like, oh, like I love that, but we can't have that in the video. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, I can definitely understand. And that's a beautiful thing. You know, that's something I tell people this a lot when I'm working with different artists or folks putting together material. I call it comparing philosophies. I can't lock into a project until I talk to whoever we're working with and compare philosophies. And if our philosophies match, then usually the work itself will turn out great because everybody's on the same page. And it sounds like you do something very similar. But also it's great to know that no matter how experimental or whatnot any of the images, because Wargasm is like this really interesting Terry Gilliam type of experimental film with all these really great cut paste type of animations in it. It's that you're in control of all of these things. So you're still very conscious of the images that are going out, and you're conscious of what messages you're trying to tell. And I think that's just beautiful, man. Because I've been meaning to ask you in general, just personally, because I got to get some of these artistic directors that you've got going on here, because it's just phenomenal. Of course, the music has a power in of itself with just listening and the audio experience. But yeah, you've taken it to a whole other level, and I think you're doing a great job with that thus far. So I would just keep on moving down the path like you've been. It's really,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, because it really helps modernize in a way, you know. And we talked about this just a little bit beforehand, that you grew up in the modern era. So even when you're playing old numbers, or there's a point where you have to think like a modern person when it comes to the approach of your music, no matter what type of material it might be, whether it's experimental or whether it's traditional, or if you've written it or you haven't written it, or if you've co-written it like several of the songs here on Renewal. Yeah, there's a very modern spin to it. And I think that that's helpful. I was even thinking of, even like in that great New York Times piece, they even have Bela Fleck himself is saying there's artillery that Billy has that I've never even thought about. And it's not that there has to be any type of comparison of anything, but just by the nature of being a modern person, you have different musical vocabulary that you can tap into. And I think that's wonderful. And it also gives the music a kick in the pants in a way that it's needed. But with that
it'd be a shame if I didn't access that stuff, you know?
Absolutely. But at the same time, you've still really stayed very locked in to, especially with the bluegrass beat. You all have really that strong flavor that still remains very prevalent within the music. You know, because some musicians they experiment and then the rhythm or the beat of the music changes, but you've stayed you've kept a very strong flavor that, again, is very distinctive and is very much yourself, which I think is just awesome. I've like, again, hearing this new record, you've it's almost like when you get into a big jam session and after doing, especially when you go to a festival, you know, you go for the weekend and you pick with a bunch of people, and then you walk away and you find that you got a little something extra. You got a little something extra in your fingers. And this album, Renewal, it feels like that. It feels like you've grown in a certain type of way, and all of your traveling, you got a little something new in your fingers that you're presenting to people, which I can always applaud no matter what, you know?
Yeah, man, and it's that little bit of confidence, you know, that I gained, I think, with the last record, and just like the shows we've been playing and stuff, and it's growing. And like I said, I'm here. Like, I'm in the music business now. Like, I'm a respected musician, you know, and that's all I've ever wanted to be. As far as like the more modernized, like, business sort of sense stuff goes, like, you know, I told you I listen to a lot of like rap and stuff like that, and I pay attention to like how those guys are doing it. Like, how is some kid making a song in his bedroom and putting it out on SoundCloud and making a platinum record?
Yeah.
How the hell is that possible? You know, and then you go look at this, I'm just, you know, whoever the example is, you know, Trippie Redd or Post Malone or, you know, any of these cats, like, you know, you look at like their Instagram and they just like post like raw photos from their, you know, cell phone, and they're always like going on live, you know, which is like a thing. I always see like those like kind of SoundCloud rappers, like they just hang out on live and just like play video games and stuff. I'm like, man, and I pay attention to all that stuff. Like, for instance, when a traditional bluegrass band comes out, you know, and I'm talking real traditional, like what I grew up with, you know, 200 people, and they're all sitting in chairs, and nobody even makes it to the stage because they're all picking in the campground. The schedule for that festival, or the ads for it or whatever, it can look like a elementary school newsletter.
Yeah.
You know? And you look at somebody who's like more of, you know, in a modern, like one of these rappers or something, and it looks like a trailer for a film. And it's like, well, man, maybe we should spend a little time maybe we should make posters, or maybe we should make, you know, I really took merchandise into my own hands, and I said, look, this is what we need to do. We need to have like merch lines, like every season, like, and that comes from following skateboard companies. I grew up skateboarding, and a big deal when it comes to skateboarding is the brands, the logos and the T-shirts and the shoes and stuff like that. And so like Vans or Pyramid Country or, Independent or whatever these companies, they'll come out with, okay, this is our fall line. These are our fall designs. And then after, these are our winter designs, and here's our spring run, so it's like, I got with my manager and I said, hey, I think this would be cool. What if we got one artist to do all of our merch designs so that when you go up to the merch table, everything is cohesive. There's, quite a few different options to choose from, but they're all made by the same artist. They're cohesive. It's like a line. And we started doing that a while back. And yeah, so just like taking the like initiative to like focus on stuff like that and see how we can up our game in all areas. Whether it's social media or merchandise or the music we're playing, our harmonies. How can we make our vocal harmonies better? Let's practice. Trying to understand, like, we have like a social media gal that really understands like algorithms and stuff like that. And you know what I mean? Just like,
yeah.
It's like techie stuff. It's so not bluegrass.
Well, it's funny. I always tell people this as well. Like even the oldest field recordings we can even think of were made with the most current and modern technology of the day. And it's in the digital age, we're in a new sort of juncture where, you make music, and music is one part of it. But then there's the distribution of music, which has completely changed. For me as an old school artist that has focused on album package and liner notes, that's been, I'm more of a recording type of guy and a live performance guy. I've found that over time I've needed to focus more on some of the ways that online distribution in all of its different forms can happen, and it's been amazing seeing you work in that way. I mean, it's where you're presenting the stage part of Billy, the visual part of Billy, the album part of Billy, and then also the fishing part of Billy too. That's another big aspect that folks that follow you, they get to see a little bit of your personal love of going out and fishing and being out in the country and stuff like that. I think it's absolutely amazing, and of course it's needed. It's it's one of those things that we can't get away from, and I think you've done a great job of finding that balance with that. It's a beautiful thing.
I think that that was also sort of inspired by these skateboard companies. There's these buddies of mine. They have this company called Pyramid Country, and they make skateboard films. But in between all the skateboarding and the amazing tricks that are going down is like just clips of those guys partying or, just doing stupid stuff like hacky sacking at the rest stop or whatever, and like people want to see that, and I want to show that to people as well. Like, I don't feel comfortable being like this kind of like done up sort of like artist, like I'm just a dude that plays music. Like I'm really just a regular guy. So, and it's like, I think for a minute there in my early stages of my career, even back when I was with Don Julian and stuff, I was trying to dress up and slick my hair back or whatever and sort of put out this image. And again, even back then, that's just being conscious of the image and stuff and trying to do something. But, I feel like I was trying to sort of be somebody that I'm not, you know what I mean? Like this like old school bluegrass guy or whatever. I grew up like, a skater punk, like, and don't get me wrong, like I play bluegrass and I love it and stuff, but it's like, I don't have to like wear the suits and all that, I can just wear a t-shirt or whatever I want to wear that day and just be myself. And it's really more healthy for me to do that because I'm not wearing a mask and I'm just, I just get to be myself. And I've found that is really the way that, is the best for me.
Absolutely, and I think it's great that you've been embracing that because it's been interesting to watch you evolve over the years from wearing the suits, and then I think back when we were on the Grand Ole Opry last year during the pandemic, you were still kind of in your tie-dye T-shirt Grateful Dead phase, and then now you're sort of like again I was looking at the short yellow hair and I was thinking like it kind of reminded me of like early 90s punk or something like that sort of vibe. and I recognize that was something that you were really wanting to embrace visually on stage, and of course it's a look that young people who might not be into bluegrass also can see and reflect, and they can embrace the music too. Of course, you still keep a nice little old time set within each of your shows. I've been noticing as you're posting your set list, there's always a little room that you set aside for bluegrass, even with everything else you're doing. Speak a little bit about that, just because you'll still do some of the tributes at the bluegrass festivals and things like that. And it's great that you've consciously also made sure to keep that part prevalent instead of just moving it to the side as you're finding new territory.
Yeah, and I've always said that too. It's like, no matter what, if you come see us play, you're going to see, we're going to play How Mountain Girls Can Love or Long Journey Home or, Way Downtown, or there's going to be some of that stuff in there because that's what I cut my teeth on. And that's what I really like, and I love being able to play that stuff for folks. Like, the other night we were playing this gig and it was at the very end of a tour and we were just all really exhausted. And I felt like the show was just sort of deflating in a way. Like, I don't know, like we were just so tired. And I sort of kicked the band off stage. I was like, hey, you guys, I'm just going to play a couple songs real quick. And they're like, okay. And I just played Black Mountain Rag, and just because I knew that I could light them up with that. Like, no matter what, I can fall back on that stuff too. If I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh shit, what should we play next? There's always, Doing My Time or Long Journey Home or Sitting on Top of the World or, and that stuff is like I said, it's what I was raised on, man. Those songs are in my blood and I'll never not play them, In fact, I'll probably play, like at some point I will do like a bluegrass record, and tour that way, playing into mics, wearing suits, playing listening rooms, and I can't wait to do that as well because I love playing, authentic bluegrass music. There's nothing like it.
Absolutely. Well, that's beautiful, man. I'm just so glad that you are finding so many different ways to keep your music moving forward and keep it moving, upward and outward and three-dimensionally as you're creating it. Actually, I'd love to ask you how it felt to do to be a part of My Bluegrass Heart with Bela Fleck, and particularly the song Revenge of the Tentacle Dragon, which is a tour de force of you and Bela just going into a completely new, different type of space. So even with the record, this one is a very unique track. How did that particular track start? And because you kind of make a comment like, "Hey, I think we got it," or you almost were surprised once the song was done in of itself, and there's just a funny little bit of you saying like, "Whoa, hey now." How did it feel to be able to get there? Because a reason I mentioned this is in case folks haven't picked up the album My Bluegrass Heart, one of the jumping off points in the liner notes is that Bela mentions his dear friend Tony Rice, which you mentioned before. Bela mentions that once Tony Rice passed away, he was struggling to find another guitar player to work with that could really get that sound like Bela wanted, and almost like you were mentioning as well, having the right rhythm to be able to solo the way that you're wanting to solo. And how did it feel to be able to jump into that seat for a little bit and just be able to vibe with Bela in that way?
Well, I'll tell you a bit about that song first. He wrote that song on guitar.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah, Bela wrote that song on guitar. And so I was over at his house. He stuck his old Martin in my lap and started playing it on his banjo a little bit, and then I'd hand him the guitar back and he'd play this part and show me stuff. And he's just he's a good friend and a mentor in a way. It's almost weird to because he is a friend to like call him that, but he knows he is. Come on, like I look up to him. Of course, we all do. He's just such a wonderful musician, and so when he called me up, and first he called me up and just said, "Hey, do you want to come over and pick?" And I went to his house, and it was just me and him, and we sat there playing. And there were even moments where we weren't even playing together. Like, I would just play, and he would just watch me. And then he would play something for me, and I would just watch. I think he was checking me out. And there was a part when we were jamming, he goes, okay, like, yeah, you are pretty good. Like, it was almost like people had been telling him about me or something, and he just wanted to check it out for himself. So he invited me over, and I got his seal of approval. And it wasn't long after that he asked me to be on his record. And of course I was like, hell yeah, he's our hero, And so leading up to the sessions, there was lots of practicing and stuff, and it gave me a chance to really get to know Bela, and just hanging out at his house and working with all these different kind of bands he was putting together. He had Billy Contreras and Michael Cleveland on fiddle. Mm-hmm. He had Edgar Meyer, Royal Massat, Mark Schatz on bass, Brian Sutton, me, Cody Kilby, Molly Tuttle on guitar, Sierra Hall, Sam Bush, David Grisman, Chris Thiele on mandolin. So I'm going out there and like, I think on the day of the first session, like I was driving out there and I had been practicing all night long trying to, I want to impress Bela. Like I want to do a good job. You know what I mean? And I feel scared that I'm not good enough. And like on my way out to the first session, I was like having this, I won't say panic attack, but like I was freaking out. I was just like, I don't belong here. I'm not, these guys are all way better than me. I don't know why Bela called me. Like, I'm going to make a fool of myself. They're going to find out that I'm an imposter. It was like terrifying, and I got into the sessions and it all just went away and the music just kind of took over and it was fun and it was awesome. And I sort of had to deal with this, like, and I've told Bela about this, I hate to get too mushy on him and stuff, but it just meant so much to me for him to call me. It really was incredibly validating for me personally. And, it was like something I even had to like talk to my therapist about. I was like, man, I just don't know why. Like, I'm going into a session with fucking Chris Thiele and Bela Fleck today. Like, these guys are going to pick circles around me. I don't know why I'm here. And she goes, well, you really love Bela Fleck, right? Like he's a great musician and you respect him. And I'm like, yeah, he's a fucking genius, like I love him. And, and she's like, well, don't you think that he would know if, you're good enough to come play on his record? Like, I think you should respect his decision to have you. And I'm like, man, that's a good call. That's actually, good point. Like, if he's such a genius and he's so awesome and stuff, like, I don't think he would call somebody that's like not worthy,
Yeah, without a doubt. And I can definitely say that your contributions to my bluegrass heart show that you are worthy. And it's funny that talking with you about your view of, again, you never want to get complacent and start feeling like you're too good for who you are. But I read a quote once from Muhammad Ali that really kind of makes me think about you now as we've been talking. And the quote is, if you're not afraid, your dreams aren't big enough. And I hear a lot of that as we're talking right now with you, Billy, where, the fear comes from being able to dream bigger. And the fact that you've been able to make so many monumental pieces of music through your whole career, but I think particularly from 2020 to 2021 thus far and moving forward, I feel like you've really done some amazing things with the music. And it's great that you still have stayed a regular guy. You've kept a good head on your shoulders about everything. And you've actually continued to transcend the obstacles that you've had in life, and you're turning your music into something that's very positive. And I think that that's really wonderful, man. And I love to know that also that you're still getting a chance to pick with some of your idols, and you're able to put your voice into the mix and it's getting acceptance. I can't help but think about my time I got to spend with Mike Seeger when he was still living. I used to go out and visit with Mike, and we would do the same thing. We would sit around and pick, or sometimes we would just listen to records, and we played together sometimes, but other times we would just kind of compare notes and stuff about different songs or different ways to arrange some of the old time material or whatnot, or even just, sometimes when you just get to chatting with people, you can ask them questions that their records can't tell you. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It sounds like you've gotten a lot of great chances to be able to do that. That's an amazing thing, man. By the way, I wanted to ask about what you thought about when we were on the Grand Ole Opry together with Old Crow and Molly. Did you know that we got number 2 on the Pollstars with over 500,000 views? We were the second most streamed program in the entire world when we did that Opry show. Did you know that?
I heard something about that back when we did it, but yeah, I mean, that's incredible, right?
Yeah, man. And it was one of the greatest things, because again, Old Crow, I've been a fan of theirs since about 2003, and so even before I decided to become a professional musician, I was loving on their music, and to be able to get on stage and do that Mama Don't Allow and have your powerful voice as a guitarist, and I was able to kick in 2 solos for both you and Molly on that one. So it was really great to to be able to, because sometimes when you're doing the solos, you get the one time around and that can be good, but when you get some really great pickers and you ask them to get that second time, they pull out something a little extra, and you were able to do that on that one, and I think that's one of the things that really, really bumped that performance up to a whole other level. How did that feel to be up there on the Opry stage, especially with no audience?
I'll tell you what, that night, or that morning rather, I woke up and I was going to play the Opry, and I was playing it solo by myself, and there was going to be no crowd there, so that morning when I was thinking about what I was going to play, I couldn't think of anything. And I was like, I have to write a song for tonight. It's the only option. I can't think of anything else to play. And so I just sat there and I wrote that little song, like, thank you to the Grand Ole Opry. And, and I was able to squeeze your name and Old Crow and Molly in a verse and stuff. And going up there and doing that, it was so vulnerable and like, scary, and knowing that a bunch of people are watching me play this song that I just wrote this morning on the Grand Ole Opry, about the Grand Ole Opry. But yeah, once I had everybody else up there, then it was just like, you know what, Dom? It felt like there was a crowd full of people there.
Yeah, it was a beautiful moment. I still think about that last note when we all hit the note of after doing Will the Circle Be Broken, and just hearing the echo of the sound of that music reverberate off of the big halls in Opryland. It's one of the moments I'm going to remember for all of my life, man. And I was just so glad that we were all together for that one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. Well, I guess we're getting to the time where I'll have to close out this interview, even though we could talk for hours and hours as always, Billy. And I guess what do you feel is the next move for Billy Strings? Again, don't give the magician's secrets away, because I want the audience to be surprised, just like they are every time you put out some amazing music. But what are you seeing in your future? Of course, you mentioned Baseku Kuyate and some new stuff that you're getting into. But what's going to be next for Billy Strings?
Well, I'm just trying to keep my nose down on the grindstone right now and keep it between the lines. This touring schedule is grueling, and it's like I'm just focusing on taking care of myself and trying to get enough sleep and drink enough water and stuff like that. And as far as what's coming down the line, I'm not exactly sure yet. We just finished up that last record and just put it out, and I haven't really started writing anything new for the new stuff, but I will say just that, that confidence we were talking about, like, I think I'm so much more confident even going into this next batch of tunes. I mean, I'm so excited to start making the next record already. and we just dropped this one. I'm like, I cannot wait to make the next one because it's going to be better. And, you know, I'm a little bit more experienced and, you know, I have a little bit more confidence and I'm a little bit more grown up and, you know, and that's all it is. You know, it's like just kind of settling into myself. You know, I think that's what Renewal is all about too, is just looking through the windshield and not at the rear view, you know, kind of. I've been dwelling on the shit that happened when I was a kid for so long, you know, the substance abuse and stuff, that I've kind of gotten to a point where I've accepted it and I'm kind of ready to move on and stop letting that sort of bring me down, you know.
That's beautiful, Billy. Yeah, and like I said, hearing you on this record, having listened to you for many years now, I hear a new confidence on this record, especially when you're singing, and especially when you're also breaking away from bluegrass in a different way, because like a song like In the Morning Light, and there are a couple of other ones as well that are slower numbers, almost more country or somewhat like pop ballads, and you're handling that material well also, and you're bringing in a really strong vocal, and you're bringing in very strong songwriting as well. I would implore anybody to make sure that you pick up a physical copy of Billy's new album when it finally starts hitting the stores, because Billy has developed into a wonderful songwriter lyrically as well as musically. And I got nothing but respect for you. And I want to thank you again, Billy Strings, for joining us on American Songster Radio, and I can't wait to see you down the road, and hopefully we'll get a chance to jam together, or when you're doing that next record, make sure you think about old Dom Flemons to get some bones on that record for you. And
absolutely.
But I'd like to close out.
I was thinking about something. I got a show coming up on December 17th and 18th in Nashville. I don't know if you're going to be around, but it's called String the Halls, and we've done it for a couple of years now. And last year we had a bunch of guests come through. It's kind of like it's our show, but we feature a lot of different guests. And so I don't know if you are available and you want to come through and jam with us, but you're more than welcome to. It's at Marathon Music Works, December 17th and 18th.
Well, I'll make a note of that and see if I can make it down. I've actually am going to start some work on a record of my own coming up in just a little bit, so I'll have to go and see where I'm at that time. But that would be amazing. So whether it happens then or down the road, that's going to be a wonderful thing. So I'm going to wrap up this segment with a little piece from your Grammy-winning album Home, and this is the one pretty much solo guitar piece that is a guitar piece with P-E-A-C-E. Could you tell me just a little bit about this wonderful little instrumental? Again, I mentioned it's mostly solo, but there's it almost sounds like there's maybe backwards guitar on it, or another sort of element.
Yeah, harmonium.
Ah, that's harmonium. Okay, I was wondering. It's a really beautiful ambient piece. It reminds you of something like John Fahey or Leo Kottke or something, maybe in that type of vein. But how did that particular instrumental come about?
I was thinking more like Ravi Shankar.
There's it was sort of, it's hard to describe since it's such a beautiful, evocative piece. But yeah, Ravi Shankar, a beautiful raga as well. It kind of goes into this beautiful space. I just was completely enamored with this piece. Was that something that, now, when you come up with a piece like this, for example, now, is this something where you just started picking and this thing came together, or was this something that came in sections?
It was completely improvised. We were in the studio making Home, and when I got home from the sessions one night, my girlfriend was watching this George Harrison documentary, and there was a bunch of stuff about Ravi Shankar and him in there. And they were talking about this Indian music that is very stream of consciousness, mm-hmm. Very much just play what your soul feels. It's not written out and composed. It's mostly just feeling. And I was just like, I want to do something like that. And so the next day in the studio, I was talking to our producer, Glenn Brown, and I was telling him about this, and he said, yeah, we can try it. And it's just like, how earlier I was saying, I sort of, it's not a formula, but I want to do a little something for each, person on each record. And on Turmoil and Tinfoil, I had this piece it was a spoken word track, and it was basically me just describing a psychedelic experience that I had. And I thought that was just, it's just kind of weird, it's not necessarily music. It's not necessarily a poem either. It's kind of just a story. And so I just wanted to put something like that on Home, like something that wasn't a song, something that, wasn't a radio song or something, you know what I mean? Like, and so when everybody went to lunch, me and the engineer hung back, and we just had about a half hour, 45 minutes. And I just like smoked a bunch of weed and kind of lit some candles and got into a vibe. And I had this old Martin guitar, and I just tuned it into this weird tuning, and we started recording, and he started playing harmonium and just giving me this drone to sort of vibe over. And I just vibed, and that's that.
Well, that's wonderful, man. That's it's one of the ultimate vibes, man. Especially on Home, which again, your Grammy Award-winning album. And again, if we had a chance to get together at the Grammys, I would have been jumping up and down, doing backflips in the aisle, seeing that you had won this one, which I was doing at home. But the cameras might have caught me jumping off the ceiling, knowing that you got to win for all of the wonderful work you've been doing, and also not just work, but excellent music as well. I mean, I can't say enough wonderful things about what you've been doing, Billy, and I can't wait to see what you come up with from here, which again, it seems like the door and the book is completely open, up, down, left, right, and three-dimensionally. And so with that being said, we're going to end out here with a little bit of Guitar Piece from Billy Strings' 2019 Grammy Award-winning album, Home. Thank you again, Billy, and safe travels on the road, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Down. Pleasure to talk to you.